found some web results. I'll send them to Tom's iPhone.
Okay, I found this on the web forum. It's a bit of an enigma. In one way, it's still touted as a flagship.
This is a video that I've wanted to make for a long time now. As someone who's created a lot of content about Siri over the years, I feel like I've got a pretty good idea of its capabilities, but also of its shortcomings and the things about it that frustrate people, of which there are many. Siri is a bit of an enigma to me. In one way, it's still touted as a flagship Apple product, talked about in every iOS release each year, given new features and capabilities. But yet using it feels like stepping into the past. It's like running 2011 technology on a 2024 phone. Which begs the question, how has it been able to get this bad? Does Apple actually acknowledge that there's a problem? And are they doing anything to fix it? Can they even fix it? These are the questions that I'll try to answer in this video. Okay, let's get into it. To find out how bad things have gotten with Apple's voice assistant, as I'll call it, as much as possible from this point on, to avoid setting your devices off, I'd personally start by taking a look at some of the comments on the numerous videos that I've made about it over the years. A quick glance through the comments pages makes for pretty dire reading. A common complaint is that people watch something on one of my videos and try to replicate it at home, only for it to not work for them, for whatever mysterious reason, possibly an issue understanding the user or a feature that's been localized to only certain regions. But another common complaint is its reliance on pointing people to articles on the web rather than trying to answer the question. I almost see this as a bit like a child asking their parent a question. What the child wants in that moment is an answer, not pointing to the local library where they can research the answer for themselves. When this happens to people using Siri, they understandably get frustrated with it and they go and find the answer some other way. If this happens too many times, the average person will simply stop using it, hence why so many people that you talk to will probably tell you that they just don't bother using it. Things aren't just restricted to being bad for consumers though. Within Apple, things are allegedly so bad that employees have pretty much given up on it, suggesting that they struggle to see how Apple can fix their voice assistant without going for a ground-up redesign. In an article from The Information last year, they reported that the team working on Vision Pro were left totally underwhelmed by the demonstrations that the Siri team gave them on how the voice assistant could control the headset, even going so far at one point as to consider building an alternative method of controlling the device using voice. So, how has it gotten so bad? There isn't really a clear answer to this, but when you do a bit of research, you can kind of put the pieces of the puzzle together to come up with some possible explanations. The first is that of the technology itself. Quite simply, the software running Apple's voice assistant is old technology when compared with that which you'd find in the LLMs, the large language models of today's AI-powered assistants. An LLM is an AI algorithm that uses deep learning techniques along with massive data sets to not only comprehend what people are asking it, but also to generate human-like responses. They're trained on huge amounts of data and can recognize, understand, translate, and even predict text, making conversing with them really simple and increasing the likelihood of them being able to answer your question. Siri, on the other hand, while still being a form of AI, is essentially built around a database. An article in Cult of Mac last year spoke with former Siri engineer John Berkey, who explained that it's built around a database of words. Ultimately, it knows what it knows, and if you're asking it something that falls outside of its very limited knowledge set, this is where you're going to run into problems. It's January as I'm making this video, and that means new year, new goals, new challenges. But with that often comes more pressure to succeed, along with all the stress that we already face every day. I know that's how I feel at the start of each year, trying to improve upon the last, trying to grow my business whilst also helping to raise my young family can be emotionally exhausting and totally overwhelming at times. I'm pretty good at talking to my friends when I'm feeling burnt out, but they've all got their stresses too, so I sometimes feel like I don't have anyone I can talk to about the challenges I'm facing. Even if I did, sometimes it's hard to share what's going on in your life, even with close friends who might not always know how to advise us. BetterHelp, who is a paid partner of this video, connect you with a credentialed therapist who's trained to listen and provide helpful, unbiased advice. With BetterHelp, you can organize therapy sessions through phone calls, video chats, or even messaging, depending on your preference and comfort level. To start, you'll fill out a questionnaire to help assess your specific needs. Once you've done that, you'll be matched with a therapist, in most cases within 48 hours. You can schedule your sessions at a convenient time for you, and if you feel that the therapist you've been matched with isn't the right fit, which is common when starting therapy, you can easily switch to a new one at no additional cost. We all like to talk about the importance of getting in the gym or getting out for exercise every day, So why not give your mind the same kind of care? Over 4 million people have used BetterHelp to start living a healthier and happier life. If you think you might benefit from therapy, give BetterHelp a try. Click the link in the description or visit betterhelp.com/properhonesttech to get started. Doing so not only supports this channel, it also gets you 10% off your first month so you can connect with a therapist and see if it helps you. Apple are also a company infamously devoted to control and not the kind of company that appreciate being made to look foolish. There was an article here in the UK this past week about delivery company DPD, who use an AI-assisted chatbot to help people looking for their parcels. A customer decided to do some testing with the chatbot to see what he could make it do beyond just asking about his delivery. He managed to get it to tell him a joke, but then managed to get it to swear at him and even write a poem about how bad DPD are as a delivery firm. The company blamed it on an update that went wrong and claimed that it's now fixed, but when you consider that Apple once admitted that they'd hired a team of writers to write Siri responses rather than leaving it to chance and letting Siri think up answers by itself, you can understand why a ChatGPT style approach just wouldn't work for Apple. And to add to Apple's problems here, the worse things have gotten with Siri, the more this has pushed their top talent to jump ship in search of better opportunities elsewhere. And you can understand why. If you're someone who operates at the bleeding edge of AI, are you going to work for someone like OpenAI, who will essentially write you a blank check and allow you to create the kind of AI you've always wanted to build? Or are you going to work for Apple, who will very much restrict what you can do? The answer is pretty clear in that Apple lost some of their best AI talent last year to companies like Google and Microsoft. The most likely reason for things being bad, in my opinion, is that things genuinely can't get any better for Siri. What I mean by this is we're no longer at a point where the software can just be tweaked and tuned to make it into something that people would actually want to use when compared with the likes of Bard and ChatGPT. This isn't a case of opening the bonnet and tweaking the engine. This is essentially a write-off, and something else is needed. Thankfully, I do believe that Apple is working on that, but we'll talk about that more in a moment. So, what should Siri be? This is a really important question, in my opinion. It's all well and good criticizing it for what it's not, but what do we actually want from our voice assistant? We'll start with the obvious. We want it to understand us, because if a voice assistant gets this bit wrong, everything thereafter is also going to be wrong. And while this might sound obvious, check online, ask your friends. People with anything other than a neutral accent often struggle to get Siri to understand them. Here in the UK, we've got something like 40 different dialects with multiple accents branching off from those. And we're a tiny nation. Imagine what this would look like in the US. Whatever comes next, it has got to be a night and day improvement when it comes to that most basic task of hearing us and understanding us. With that out of the way, we want our voice assistants to be actual assistants. If you think about it, that was the whole point of Siri all along. Help me to get more done in my day by being my digital assistant. And in some ways it does, but the limitations are what's stopping it from being amazing. Let's take a simple example. You wake up in the morning and as a busy business person, you've woken up to 150 unread messages in your inbox. You ask your iPhone voice assistant about your email and it begins reading your most recent emails in chronological order. My guess is that pretty quickly you tell it to stop and you go and grab your phone. Let's say instead that you're using Siri 2.0, as we'll call it, the AI-powered version. You ask it about your email, and it tells you that you've received 150 emails overnight. But out of those emails, the most important is a complaint from one of your customers who's angry because the service you've signed them up to isn't working. Siri's actually recognized this, and it's automatically drafted a reply back to the customer, letting them know how sorry you are and that you're looking into the issue. All you have to do is approve it, edit it if you like it, and then ask it to send. It's also booked a call with one of your engineers for that morning so that you can talk through the issue with them. It then proceeds to summarize the 10 other mid-level important emails for you. One of those examples is genuinely useful and is the way in which a real assistant would function. And you can take that functionality and apply it to pretty much any other area of the iPhone's ecosystem. It should be able to not only capture notes in audio format from you, but transcribe those notes, format them correctly, and then provide a summary of said notes. It should be able to summarize my favorite podcasts for me, let me know about new music that I might want to listen to based on a deep understanding of my tastes. It should be able to think on its feet when we're out in the car using maps and quickly divert me away where needed based on real-time data, not just traffic. One thing I really think it should be able to do is remember things and recall them back to me. What I mean by that is, let's say that I'm getting fitted for a suit and I get measured. That information is useful to remember so that I can order things online in the correct size, but it's a pain having to write a note each time. Plus, that note now just lives forever in my Notes app, when chances are I'm only going to look at it one more time when the information is needed. It would be much easier to say, remember my collar measurement is XYZ, and then when I need the information, be able to say, remind me what my collar measurement is, and it simply gives you the answer. This to me is a much more assistant way of working. And while this might sound far-fetched, much of this is already possible on competing systems. Samsung have, for example, just announced their Galaxy AI, which can do much of this, including amazing things like real-time translation of phone calls, automatically summarizing the contents of group chats, and circle to search, where you can literally circle anything on your Samsung phone screen and find out more about it. There's one other product that I wanted to mention in this video because it adds to my confusion with Siri, and that's Vision Pro. Apple's VR AR spatial computing headset is their biggest launch in a decade, possibly of Tim Cook's tenure at Apple. It is the bleeding edge of AR technology, and yet, unless we find out otherwise when people get theirs on the 2nd of February, it runs Siri, software that has only somewhat improved since its launch in 2011. This is weird to me, but there are a few reasons why Apple may have chosen to do this. One is that the next generation Siri that we're all hoping for either doesn't exist or it doesn't exist in a state suitable to be put into Vision Pro just yet. The idea of it not existing at all is really unlikely to me. I think it's more likely that it's not in a state that's ready for general use. Plus, if Apple does release a Siri 2.0, I think it's the kind of product that they're going to want some fanfare around, which means a major launch. I'd expect it to be announced at WWDC this June and launched in September alongside new iPhones, which of course doesn't coincide with Vision Pro. And whilst that might sound like an odd choice, keep in mind that Apple have very conservative estimates about how many Vision Pros they're likely to ship this year, so the number of people even likely to experience Siri on Vision Pro is tiny by Apple numbers. They can simply add it to Vision Pro version 2 or 3 or whatever. The other explanation, and one which I'm not so keen on, but absolutely do believe as being possible, is that this is going into a dedicated AI phone for release in September. And that leads us to the next talking point of this video. Up until recently, I had no idea what Edge AI was, but it is potentially the most important part of this whole discussion in terms of Siri seeing actual improvements. Edge AI is essentially on-device AI. So the problem with services like ChatGPT, for example, from Apple's perspective, is that it involves you submitting requests to remote servers for processing, with responses then being generated back. You don't know this while you're doing it, of course, but it's the reason why A, you always need an internet connection to use ChatGPT, and B, can run ChatGPT on pretty much anything with an internet connection. It's also a privacy concern from Apple's perspective. On-device AI allows for AI-related tasks to be dealt with entirely locally without ever leaving your device. This both negates the need for an internet connection, but it also alleviates those privacy concerns because the data stays on your device in a secure part of the phone's chip. This will almost certainly be handled by a beefed-up version of Apple's Neural Engine, a component of their silicon that exists on their A and M series chips, designed specifically for these sorts of tasks. Right now, the Neural Engine is used to power features like Face ID, Memojis, offline dictation and OCR, and pretty much everything computational with photos and videos. Quite simply, Apple already do a lot when it comes to AI. They just don't call it AI, they call it machine learning, and it's not as flashy as what some of their competition are doing. So here's how I think the rest of the year is going to play out. Vision Pro will launch and it will be what it will be. I'm probably going to make a separate video about that. But importantly for this topic, it will launch with regular Siri, and Apple will get away with it because while Siri will be annoying to use on Vision Pro, the hype of Vision Pro will divert from much of the criticism. Then at WWDC in June, Apple will unveil their take on generative AI. Whether this is seen as two separate products, one for AI and one for Siri, I'm unsure. I think that they're more likely to package it all together as all new Siri or something similar. But here's the thing, I think that for most of their WWDC keynote, it won't get a mention. I think that iOS 18 will be shown with its new features and functionality like any other WWDC. And that's because I think that all new Siri will only run on brand new hardware. I think it will be exclusive to the iPhone 16 Pro, perhaps even the long speculated iPhone 16 Ultra. And I think that the only way that you'll be able to enjoy all new Siri is by upgrading to the latest and greatest iPhone. There are a few reasons why I think this. There is the first possibility, which is that it will only be able to run on the processor that they put into their latest phone. I don't buy this personally. Apple Silicon for phones and tablets is already way overpowered for most use cases, but it could be something that Apple claim. It could even be factual. The optimist in me thinks that it's because Apple want to test this out on a much smaller subset of users before pushing out to the wider audience. There are around 2 billion iPhone owners in the world, and if you assume that half of those have phones that could be capable of running any new Siri, that's potentially a lot of people to report on possible negative experiences while they iron out the inevitable kinks. Remember, I told you that Apple don't like being embarrassed and they hate being out of control. Restrict it to only the people who bought the new model, the people who are likely your biggest fans anyway, and you can make changes in a much less public environment. The cynic in me thinks that this is about money. iPhone sales have plateaued in recent years, Mac sales are down despite the incredible advancements that Apple have made in their own silicon. In many ways, the quality of Apple's devices has become their number one problem. People don't see a reason to upgrade so often, with the average user holding onto their phones now for 4, maybe 5 years, computers even longer. Apple need to fix this, and one way to fix it is to lock out an undeniably killer feature, restricting it to only their top-of-the-range phones. I hope I'm wrong, because my concern is if it's restricted to only the top-of-the-range iPhones, what about the rest of the lineup? I have an M2 iPad Pro. Do I need to replace that? I've got an M2 Max MacBook Pro, an M2 Ultra Mac Studio, blazingly powerful Mac computers that are both less than a year old. Are they going to run new Siri, or am I going to have to replace those next year? I hope this isn't the case, because anything else is going to feel like one hell of a cash grab, admittedly by the richest company in the world. That said, if Apple get this right, then the Apple Watch and the HomePod Mini could be about to become the most incredible Apple products ever. Just imagine, next generation Siri capabilities on your watch. Now that's exciting. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, so drop me a comment and let me know what you think. Also, regular channel viewers, what do you think of the new video essay format? Tell me what you think, I've got lots more planned. And as ever, if you found this video useful, do please consider leaving me a like and subscribing to my channel for more content like this in the future. See you on the next video.